weapons you wouldn't dare use. Fear rules man. By summoning all the dark powers, I will infest the spirit of man, so that he uses his science and logic to destroy himself. What havoc and rage! Turn brother against brother. Greed and avarice shall prevail, and those who do not hear my words shall pay the price. I'll teach man to use his machines. I'll show him what distorted science can give birth to. I'll teach him to fly like a fairy. I'll give him the ultimate answer to all his science can ask, and the world will be free for my magic again. While your powers die, mine will flourish. Man will never inherit my domain. For I am making man mine. He will understand and come to desire my magic. It is inevitable. You shall see. This dark determination, I swear. By this Fluffenhammer podcast, the source of all my dark power. So be it. Now and forever. In other words, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fluffenhammer.
Yeah, hi, ladies and gents. I'm 6 years old again. It's just like this wave of nostalgia. There's one thing you didn't do though, Gruff, and that was the laugh. You've got to do the James Earl Jones laugh, the sort of to make it work. Yeah. Awesome. Oh god, that was, I mean, for the
Doom.
I mean, the notion of a whole fleet of dragons sailing across the worlds of AOS is great, isn't it? I would go for that. As a campaign, perhaps later on, I'd go for that, definitely. Yeah. A Flight of Dragons inspired campaign.
And Valdus Hammerhand came to Sigma and said, "A flight of dragons!"
I'll tell you, James Earl Jones just goes for that role, doesn't he? He just like, I mean, some of the other voice acting is maybe a little bit, but God, he just sells it. I mean, for those who don't know what we're talking about, by the way, that was a quote from The Flight of Dragons, ladies and gents, which is one of just, I think people our age kind of get it. You know, it's one of those lost cartoons of the 1980s, and it's beautiful. If you get chance to go and watch it, please do so, because it's awesome.
It is. It's a thing of intent. I'll put it this way. When's the last time you heard science being used as a weapon? And I don't mean science, I mean science
as
words.
In like a concept. The very concept of science. I mean, that's what it sets up, isn't it? Like the dynamic is imagination and magic versus reason and science. And I love the side that it comes down on, which is like, it's this wonderfully ambiguous that imagination and inspiration and magic and dreams are necessary, absolutely necessary, but that reason is the way forward. I really like that. I think that's really cool. But yes, this is a Games Workshop podcast, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. And tangentially, I suppose it does make sense, because we are talking about things fantastical and dragons and witches and wizards and knights and all of that good stuff.
Well, that we all got into Games Workshop through other mediums.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm fairly sure that without Flight of Dragons, I wouldn't have got into Warhammer.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is something I'm perpetually fascinated by. It's something I explore a lot in my my sort of exterior work, my articles, and even my fiction, which is influence. I'm perpetually fascinated by how influence shapes the states of our imagination. So what they put out is what you put in. Essentially, at an early age, people's obsessions are shaped at that point, and even the physical states of their minds are shaped at that point. And Flight of Dragons is one of those things that's indelible for me. I experienced it at such a young age.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
And it shaped my interests from that point on. I've always had a thing about dragons, like a real thing about dragons. And witches and wizards and warlocks and all that kind of good stuff.
And algebra and archaeology and geometry.
Pretty much everything, yeah. Everything is fascinating. That's part of the problem, isn't it? It's part of the problem. It's narrowing it down. There are too many fascinating things in the world and not enough time in one lifetime to explore them all. It's why, like, you know, the common notion of immortality, you know, the sort of cultural notion that, oh, I wouldn't like that, you know, you see all of your friends and loved ones die. You know, after a while, that wouldn't matter so much.
You'd lose the sting after the first 150 years.
Absolutely. You would learn to accommodate it, and having that time, assuming that you are, you know, you're able to live and be able, you know, be in an able-bodied state and not sort of age along that line, that would be terrible. Don't get me wrong, that would be awful. But if you could stay in a particular state, and then you could learn to play instruments, you could learn to do everything. You could learn to do everything. It'd be wonderful. It'd be really fascinating. There's so much stuff it would take you probably up to the end of time itself.
See, that's where it gets problematic, where you're just sitting there by yourself on a dead rock.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it?
Well, this was a bad idea. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read it, but have you ever seen Hulk the End?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Right. It's a fascinating one where mankind is dead.
Right.
And an old Bruce Banner just walks across this irradiated Earth.
Okay.
And the Hulk will not let him die.
So the Hulk has made him immortal as well. It's not just that he's like invulnerable, he's actually immortal as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's not immortality through he can't die. It's every time that he's about to die, the Hulk comes out and stops him dying.
Right. So it's a kind of trick immortality in a kind of way. It's a kind of like get out clause.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
It is such a great read. It's truly dystopian and
that's a really cool concept. That's a really cool way of introducing like a new dynamic to the character.
Yeah. So I think
like that.
when the end kicks in, it's mankind's been dead for hundreds of years and he's just wandering around by himself.
Bruce doesn't have much luck, does he?
Bruce Banner is a very unlucky man.
He's a hard luck guy, isn't he? God
it's
almighty.
A hard knock life for Bruce. It's a hard knock life for Bruce. Anyhow, we're not here to talk about Marvel Comics. We're here to talk about
immortality or dragons or anything like that.
A flight of dragons. Doom.
For my
Doom.
I mean, for my money, we could just spend the whole podcast talking about Flight of Dragons. I'd be very happy with that, but I don't think the people at home would be entirely into it.
For those of you who are on the YouTube, what I'll do is I will upload the 3 separate episodes of the lock-in that I've done about the Flight of Dragons, if anybody wants to know about the Flight of Dragons. That's not a problem. I've already got to upload all of the Lurkers in the Lobby stuff because I've had a lot of people ask for the Lovecraft stuff that we've done in the past. Me and you did, George, so they're all going up onto YouTube at some point.
We did, and it was fascinating. It was a fascinating experience, was that. As anything involving Lovecraftianism, you know, is bound to be.
Yeah, it's true. But before we get started today, we've got a little bit of housework to get through.
Okie dokie.
Because there's a couple of bits and bobs. So, me and George have now come up with an idea of how to do the Fluffenhammer going forward. Part of that idea is that the first episode of each month is going to be a catch-up episode where we're going to look at what's happened in the last month and bring it forward. And then we'll also have the episodes where we're getting people in to talk about their journey. That way we're hitting both parts of what we're wanting to talk about. But I think what we'll do with this one is, as well as talking about the stuff that's happened, we're also going to bring in a little bit of community feedback and stuff like that as well. So this is going to be, as we are really enjoying the free-form version of the Fluffenhammer that we've kind of settled ourselves into, we're going to keep on with that. So this is going to have some segments to it, which we don't really do with the journey episodes, but I think this is going to be the way that we're going to go forward.
Yeah.
We're not going to announce anything else yet, but there's some other stuff in the works, so keep your eyes open, because there's a Patreon that's going to be coming that's going to have satellite shows attached to it.
Yay.
Those satellite shows will be short-lived, a couple of episodes each, and then they'll go away, and then there'll be another one that takes its place, and then either another one after that or the first one will come back. We're going to do them in seasons, basically.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And we can
so
sort of gauge,
a load of fun.
you know, how people like them or, you know, how they respond to them. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and it also allows us to play with different things and do different things at different times. You'll be happy to know that Chris, who was on the last episode, he's currently... I'm working with him on some stuff as well, so we've got quite a lot that's going to be
brilliant.
coming. The Fluffenhammer is basically fluffing exploding.
It is like a giant ball of fluff, isn't it, under your bed that just keeps accruing and accruing and accruing until there is something under there that you just don't, you know not what of. You don't really want to take a vacuum to it in case there's something gestating at the middle that you disturb.
Wait a minute. I know what's in the bottom of here. I'll just get into my belly button. I was right. It is a flight of dragons!
Is that going to be the consistent theme? I think it is. I've got a funny feeling. I thought it was going to be sort of Slaanesh flavoured, which does tend to happen. But no, I think we're going down the Flight of Dragons route now. But speaking of Slaanesh, I mean, we were talking about him, weren't we, before we got on here?
We did, yes.
And I mean, I don't want to sort of, you know, I don't want to arouse people's hopes and other things. Obviously, it is Slaanesh, but people's hopes. But I've got a funny feeling reading what's been put out there that he is coming, you know.
He is. If I was to place money down, this is what I think the rest of this year is going to look like. What we're going to get is elves, sea elves.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, definitely.
Whatever the high elves are
I mean,
going to be.
that's what they've set up.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think they're going to have a nautical theme, aren't they? I think what they're going to do is, I've got a funny feeling they're going to actually look back to their roots. They're going to look back to Tolkien because, of course, the elves were a seafaring race back then.
Yes,
and I imagine that's what they're going to go with. They're going to make them slightly nautical, slightly piratical, maybe.
Fishmen.
Fishmen, fishmen are coming back. My God, Fishmen in 40k. This is ace. This is brilliant. But what are they going to do with them? I'm wondering what kind of fishmen they're going to be, because you know they're doing what they're doing in AOS is they're kind of lampooning the fantasy archetypes that they used to use in the fantasy battle game in the world that was. So my guess is they are not going to be straight fishmen.
Oh no.
There's gonna be some sort of weirdy beardy AOS twist on them, would be my guess.
If I was to hazard a guess, I would say that they are going to be more crustacean than fish.
Okay, that's really cool too, because I was thinking along the lines of like Lovecraft, you know, I was thinking like Innsmouth, Dagon, that kind of thing. Maybe they might go down that route, so there's going to be like a big fishy god that they serve or something like that.
You've just called every religion by its true name there. Anyhow, moving on. Big fishy god. No, anyhow. Yeah, I think that what we're going to get over the next few months is AOS is going to get a lot of elf, or however you pronounce it, stuff.
Yeah. However you pronounce it.
Yeah.
I call them Alfs, because I like Alf. I think that's cool. I like the fact that they're all called Alf now.
I quite like the idea that all of the elves now talk in a thick Brooklyn accent. Where are they? Stop eating the cat.
Ace.
So what I think we'll see is we're going to see elf, probably 3 or 4. I'm not sure which it's going to come down on. And once all those elves are out, that's when you'll see Slaanesh get out. When you start to see Teclis and Tyron's children come to the fore, something will happen, and that's going to be the next point. Because what I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, Malign Portents is sneaky. Malign Portents.
There are these little hooks.
Yeah. Malign
These
Portents,
little story hooks peppered throughout.
It's not just about Nagash. Malign Portents is the thing that springboards Marathi and her daughter Zakane.
It does, yeah.
It's just like, hang on.
It's It's an odd thing, isn't it? Ostensibly, it's about Nagash, because Nagash is sort of in the ascendant in the realms at the moment. And that seems to be what happens. It's sort of cyclical. So you get certain powers and certain of what were the winds of magic, which are now the realms, which are crystallized into the realms, being ascendant over the others, in the same way that in the realm of chaos, you get certain chaos powers that are ascendant over the others in a cyclical nature. And at the moment, it is definitely Sheesh that's in ascendant. It's Nagash that is dominating. But there are the seeds of that ending. You know, you're already starting to see that turning, which is really wonderful. Really, really cool. What I was thinking about earlier was I've got this funny feeling, given the little details that are thrown into the malign portents about Slaanesh, I think they're going to set up like a Thanatos and Eros thing. And that would be the clever thing to do, obviously.
Yeah,
that would be the clever thing. Nagash is obviously Thanatos. I think what's going to happen is Nagash is going to push all the other forces, all the other realms to the very brink. I think he's going to be on the edge of winning, essentially.
Yeah.
And then Slaanesh is going to emerge. That's
that
what I think.
Cool.
And I don't know how it's going to happen. And I think Slaanesh's re-emergence is going to mark the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
And the next dynamic of the game. That would be my guess. I don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, maybe they're going to have no choice. Maybe they're going to have to release him. Wouldn't that be cool? If his captor's like, we need Slaanesh, you know. He is the diametric opposite of Nagash in many, many ways. He is life. He is the lust for life, you know. He is individuality and inspiration. He's colour and passion. Whereas Nagash is the absolute opposite of that. So setting up that Thanatos and Eros dynamic is an obvious thing to do.
It is. I really like that as an idea.
I mean, it must have occurred to them. I can't believe that it didn't. And also, you've got like other dynamics as well. Like you were saying, you've got the elves coming back, and the elves are just like the Eldari or the Eldar in 40k. They've always been the classic enemies of Slaanesh. So having them come out and then having Slaanesh at the end makes loads of sense. Loads of sense.
Well, I quite like the idea that Nagash is ascendant, and the only way to stop him is for Tyrone and Teclis, bloody Teclis, to release Slaanesh, because then that ties into something that I have thought for years. God damn it, Teclis, stop trying to help. You are awful at it.
Teclis has had a lot of problems, hasn't he? I mean, if you read, those of you who were around in the previous game system and in the world that was, the End Times version of Teclis is a twat. He's just awful.
The End Times happens because Teclis tries to help, basically.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Teclis is a bit like Eldrad Ulthran, isn't he? You know, in 40k, he's a meddler, and he's a manipulator, and he can be really quite unpleasant at times. He is not an unambiguously positive force, as the elves tend to be portrayed. You know, he is not an unambiguously positive force. But in the End Times, it's just because he's incompetent. It's because he can't get things right. I mean, he missed the entire cult of Slaanesh. He missed that was happening. But then again, to be fair, so did Malekith, and it was his own mother that was doing it.
It's true,
yeah. You know.
It's almost like, for example, Magnus Calgar not realising there's a Gene Stealer cult on Ultramar. Yeah, it's that... Hang on. Oh, no, that actually happened. It's that level of just not paying attention. Teclis is an idiot. And... Yeah,
Teclis is one of those weird characters that markets himself as being like an arch manipulator and as being massively clever and intelligent. But if you read the actual stories that he's involved in, he gets it wrong a lot.
Yeah, more often than not, to be honest with you.
More often than not, yes.
It's actually what makes me want to do whatever the High Elves is going to be, so I can just dress them all up as clowns.
Whatever they are going to be. I mean, are we going to get like... I mean, some of the gods we've got. Obviously, we've got Nagash, and we've got Alariel, and we've got Morathai now, who is sort of like a pseudo divinity. So, are we going to get Teclis and Tyrion in their new forms because they are now the Lords of Light? Is that correct?
It is. Yes, they have become gods themselves, and
they're the manifestations of the gods of light, aren't they? So, what are they going to be? What are they going to look like? How are they going to manifest?
I don't actually know, because we don't know what the High Elves are going to become.
No, all we know is that, I mean, this is again, I believe, from Malign Portents. All we know is that Teclis and Tyrion, when they captured Slaanesh, it sort of siphoned all of the elven souls that Slaanesh had devoured in the end times out of the god, and then allowed them to manifest again. So they're a bit like the Seraphon in certain ways. They're not. They've been touched by Slaanesh, so I imagine that's going to have some influence on them. In the same way it has for like the Dark Elves, you know, like the Daughters of Cain. They've got an enormous Slaaneshi influence now. Enormous. They look like a Slaanesh army, don't they?
They really do.
They really do. They look just like... essentially, if you want Slaanesh Chaos Elves, go for the new Daughters of Cain. Go for the new Daughters of Cain, with all of their sort of serpentine bodies, with their sort of harpy thing going on. Their Gorgon-esque elements. They look like Slaanesh creatures. So I'm imagining there's going to be a little bit of that influence in what were the High Elves.
I think so, yeah. I think what we're going to see is the High Elves are going to be a lot more ornate. There's going to be a lot more, I don't know what the word would be, decoration to them. They won't be just the simple...
Yeah, I think so too.
I think the problem is I don't want to try and second guess, because so far at Games Workshop, whenever they've pulled something new out, it's been so far out of left field that there's no way of being able to go, I saw it coming. I mean, let's talk...
It's been surprising, hasn't it? I mean, the Caradron Overlords, I mean, in fact, before then, the Fire Slayers, I never foresaw that coming. That they were going to turn the dwarf, one subsection of the dwarfs into these weird sort of fire elementals, these almost D&D fire elemental characters. And I tell you what, it's done for the dwarven range absolute wonders. Absolute really wonders. Yeah. I was not, the dwarfs in the world that was, they were fine. I kind of found them amusing, but they were one of those races I just was not interested in. I had no interest in them at all, because they're essentially just Tolkien-esque, aren't they? With a little bit of steampunk thrown in. They're kind of just Tolkien-esque. Not anymore.
No, they've gone way down.
Nowhere near anymore.
The Fire Slayers. I didn't like the Fire Slayers until I read the Silver Tower book. And it's down to the aesthetic, because they just seem far too naked for my liking. I think it's something to do with the helms.
That, naked guy... Naked guys running around, that's fine by me. I don't care about that. That's superb as far as I'm concerned. More of that, Games Workshop, more of that. I've been hankering for male demonettes or like male heralds of Slaanesh forever.
Aye.
You know? To the point where I've made some of my own.
I want to see pictures of these.
Well, I'll put some up on the Fluffenhammer. They're not what you think. They're not sort of like perverse or anything like that. They're just male as opposed to, rather, they're more overtly male than overtly female. Because of course, demonettes are androgynous. They can be either, or they can be anything. You know, all things to all men and women, and everything in between. That's what the demonettes are.
Yeah. I've totally forgotten my train of thought here, because all I'm thinking here is...
yes, we were talking about the... yes.
Oh, the Fire Slayers, yes.
we were talking about the Fire Slayers, and we got off track.
I was thinking it was just like demon pincer fingers that were penises rather than claws. Can't get the image out of my head now. It's... Hashtag tits and tentacles.
It's going all a bit... flesh mops, etc. It's going a little bit to Legend of the Overfiend, isn't it?
God, no, it's not. No, it's not.
No.
Do you know what my biggest problem
not going down that route.
No, my biggest problem with Legend of the Overfiend is there's a good story in there.
I know what you mean. I like the mythology.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I actually really like the mythology. Some of the imagery I really like. I like the apocalypse at the end.
Yeah.
I like what Nagumo becomes at the end. It's just all the stuff that's around it. It's like, oh, it's all the very worst of anime. It's like, oh,
very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Anyway,
digress.
Yes, so, Fire Slayers.
What got me interested in them was in the Silver Tower, there's a Fire Slayer character, and he's been wandering around the Silver Tower for probably about 1,000 years. He's been, every time that somebody new has come in, he's been deposited near them so he can watch them die, basically. And he has to...
Poor guy.
And because he took this oath that he was going to get somebody out, he keeps going. Now, the person he said he was going to get out died very, very quickly, but he still made that oath, so he's still trying to get somebody out. He can't rest until he gets somebody out. He's very just destroyed internally. You know, there's nothing left of any. I don't want to say humanity, in him, but basically that's the case.
But dwarvenness. His dwarvenness. Or whatever.
He's a shell. And then there's this bit where the Stormcast fires him up, riles him right up, and he stands there and he starts shouting, and all the tattoos on him start to glow. And he becomes a living engine of war, you know. And when that got that bit,
so
it's like,
he basically combusts, yeah?
Yeah. And I got this point, it's like, you are a physical elemental, aren't you? You're not just a big Slayer dwarf. You are a walking avatar of your god. And once that bit got me, it's like, yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. I think that's really cool. And the miniatures are really cool too. You know, they're sort of dynamic, and they're all diving and ducking all over the place. And they've got these parts of them are streaming into flame, and they've got fiery beards and fiery hair.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm well into that. I really am. And I know that it hit people a little hard, you know, because it was so different from what had gone before. Especially Dwarven players, you know, who were used to their ranks of guys with their helmets and their beards and whatnot. They were used to that. But I tell you what, people have embraced it.
Yeah. Well, now that the Fire Slayers
have embraced it. They've taken it...
The Fire Slayers have been looked at again in the General's Handbook, and the rules for them have been modified slightly, which makes them work a lot better.
Yep.
And now people are kind of getting used to what Age of Sigmar is. The Fire Slayers are becoming more popular.
Oh yeah, it's without a doubt. And now we've got the Kharadron Overlords, of course, which people have gone mental for. I think people have been wanting a bit of steampunk. In AOS for a long time. They've wanted a 40k a Games Workshop steampunk army, which the old dwarfs kind of had, but not much.
Yeah, it was the beginnings of it.
Not a great deal of. Yeah, but now, full blown. To the point whereby they've even got that sort of pseudo-Victorian thing going on. They've got the top hats and everything, the monocles and just everything. It's wonderful. The H.G. Wells airships, the lot, they've just gone full blown. And you know what? I would collect an army of them in a heartbeat. First time I would ever be interested in collecting a dwarf army. Yeah. Ever, ever, ever. I think they're spectacular.
They are. And I'm slowly but surely building a small dwarven top hat army up. I'm really tempted to give them all top hats.
The top hats are the thing.
Hats as far as the eye can see.
I would want every miniature to have a top hat. I would want to model one of the airships as a big top hat.
It's got a rabbit inside it just looking out.
I mean, that's one of the fun things you can do with AOS as well. I mean, you could do it back in the old world as well, but the potential for theming your armies is enormous.
Well, yeah, I mean...
It's absolutely enormous.
The undead army that I'm currently putting together, I say currently put together, it's been... This has been the one that's kind of got the most push, and I didn't realise that I'd been doing the undead more than anything else since Malign Portents hit.
Yeah.
At the moment, I've been building up a Mortis engine, and
I've seen your Mortis engine. It's ace.
It started off being I had the skull base from the hero box, and I was looking at it going, I don't really want to put anything on that as a base because it's too big, and so I started attaching skulls to it, and then next thing I knew, I'd built a small boat, and then it's like I like this, but it doesn't feel right yet. So I went full Baba Yaga and gave it some chicken legs, and now it's just this giant...
That's exactly what I thought.
Oh yeah, it's full Baba Yaga.
When I saw it with the legs, it's total Baba Yaga's hut. That's awesome.
And now I've got this giant lurching skull ship, and I'm so happy with it.
I love the fact that you've used the old Hero Quest Chaos Sorcerer on it too.
Yes.
It just adds in this sort of classic reference. Mm-hmm. Lair of the Witch King and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. I'm actually tempted to try and make some references in the army to the Witch King, just for the hell of it.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. Why not?
I think so. I think that's the thing.
But yeah, I mean, it's a very topical thing. I would not be surprised to see gaming boards and hobby sites just exploding with undead armies at the moment.
Yeah, because Malign Portents is fantastic. In fact, shall we get into Malign Portents? Shall we throw ourselves into it?
Yeah, let's go. Oh. Let's go for Malign Portents, because there is so much, isn't there? I mean, we've had, since the last time we did one of these podcasts, what have we had? We've had, in AOS alone, we've had the Maggotkin of Nurgle. Yeah. That was probably the earliest thing that we haven't talked about, which is spectacular.
I've read through it, but I haven't got it yet.
Oh god, the god-specific books for AOS and for 40k, quite frankly, the god-specific books have convinced me utterly that it's the way to go.
Yeah.
It's just the way to go. It gives them more space to explore the gods, but also their servants, to explore the imagery of these guys. And the Maggotkin it's right up there with the Disciples of Tzeentch for me. It's fetid and filthy and disgusting, and it has these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful elements. Like, you get pictures of the Garden of Nurgle. There are actually pictures of the Garden of Nurgle now, and these florid page-long descriptions of what goes on there. It's just wonderful. I mean, it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book to read. It is. And leaving aside all the technical stuff, all of the rules and whatnot, which are loads of fun, by the way. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous read.
The thing that gets me about these books so far is that every time I've looked at them, it's almost impossible to not get a feel for the Force just from the way that the books have been put together. You don't need to start reading it straight away. You can just flick through it and you get a feel for what it is. It's...
Absolutely. You know what they feel like? They actually feel like, despite the fact they're obviously much more sophisticated and much better laid out, they feel like the old Realm of Chaos books.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They've got all of that, like, that ethos about them, which technically was lost for a little while in favour of expediency, in favour of pragmatism. Yeah. Not anymore. My God, these books seethe with character. Every page just radiates with it. And when you do start reading, I mean, whoever wrote this book is sick. This is coming from me, knowing the things that I write, Nurgle's always been explicit. It's always been hideously explicit. It's always been part of its background. It's all been about the spilling guts, the lesions, the filth, the maggots. They just go for it with this one. Whoever wrote it loves that stuff. They love the sort of parasites wriggling through intestines and the nurglings suckling on rancid boils and just the friggin' hideousness of it all. They go for it. It's absolutely wonderful.
The question I've got for you then is, when getting somebody into AOS, which would you give them first? Would you give them the Blades of Khorne? Would you give them the Maggotkin? Or would you give them the Disciples of Tzeentch?
That's a very difficult one to say, actually, because it depends on what their inclinations are. Of course. I mean, the Disciples of Khorne is the easiest one to use.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's the easiest one to use because Khorne is so straightforward.
Yeah.
Khorne is so... But even that book has got these wonderful complexities to it. Because Khorne doesn't have magic, which is a big thing in AOS, it's actually a significant part of the game. They've introduced all of these Khornate prayers.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are these laws of Khornate prayers that the priests of Khorne, and there are various forms of priest in the book, can use that have often battlefield-wide effects for a turn or so, and you have to decide which one you want to use. So It's very difficult to say. For my money, my favourite of the books, I can tell you what my favourite is, and the one that really inspires me, and that's because of my inclinations, it's the Disciples of Tzeentch book.
Yeah. Same with me, actually.
That's the one for me. That's the one for me. In terms of just like reading, in terms of how fun they are to read, I mean, I'd say they're pretty much on an equal status in that regard.
Okay.
But for me, it's the Disciples of Tzeentch. So it's difficult to say. It's very difficult to say which one would be a good introductory book, especially since we haven't had the Slaanesh book yet, which we will reasonably soon, I imagine.
Slaanesh.
So I think
coming.
then it will be easy. Yeah, Slaanesh is most definitely coming. Oh dear.
Slaanesh.
Yeah. Anyway,
coming.
There's the title of the episode, ladies and gents. I think then it will be much easier to determine how Chaos is going to function in AOS in general. Yeah. And I imagine in 40k as well, because there will be an attendant 40k release as well.
Of course, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, as there have been seeds of Slaanesh's return in AOS, but there have also been seeds of it scattered throughout 40k as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Fulgrim is definitely on the way. There's no doubt Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children are on the way. But before we get fully into that, I don't know. I mean, I suppose the Disciples of Khorne would be the best one to give a new player because it's so accessible.
It is.
It's the most accessible of the army lists.
Well, as we were saying before we started recording, Khorne is my first Chaos army. It's the one to pull you in because it is the simplest. It's the one that's the more built into the rule set. Yeah, it is Warhammer Age of Khorne.
Yes. It's the archetypal Warhammer army, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's the here are loads of weapons, go forth and slaughter. Whilst Tzeentch is.
What's more, I'd say the Blades of Khorne is also a very good army for people who are used to what Chaos used to be back in the world that was, because it's structured and plays like an old Chaos army.
Yeah.
You know, where you've got your knights and you've got your masses of chaos warriors and you've got your lesser sort of cultist style characters, or your Norskans. They're the Blood Reavers in this one. That's how it's structured. I would say what they did with the Blades of Khorne is the opposite of what they did with the Disciples of Tzeentch. In the Disciples of Tzeentch, they wanted to do the diametric opposite of a classic chaos force. Blades of Khorne, they wanted to exemplify it, so that everybody of every taste has got something that they can play with. If you want your Chaos Army to play how it used to play in the old systems of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, get a Blades of Khorne army.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Because it does. It totally does. You charge. You close the distance. That's what you do with a Khorne army. You rampage across the battlefield and you make contact as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And when they do, bodies start to fly.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the Khorne. I think the interesting thing about how it's working out is the one that I would actually give people is Nurgle. And
you'd give the Maggotkin, yeah?
Yep, and it's purely because that's so far removed from what Warhammer Fantasy Battle is. It's like, this is how the status quo is. This is what Chaos feels like in Age of Sigmar. And I think that,
I totally see the logic behind that.
I think that would be a really good way of getting people in. Also, my brother is a huge Nurgle player and has been for many, many years. And I quite like the idea of just waving the Maggot King of Nurgle in front of his face, going, "Do you want it? Do you want it?" Actually, it's his brother. It's his birthday this month. I'll have to. I think I just know what I'll get him for his birthday.
There you go. Well, I totally agree, actually. If you look at the way the Maggotkin are structured and the way they function, it is totally different from the Blades of Khorne. It is totally different from the Disciples of Tzeentch. And it is much more how Nurgle has operated in the background than he ever has in the rule system. So you have these wonderful elements like the Feculent Gnarlmaws, for example. So you can actually bring the Garden of Nurgle onto the battlefield. It's so weird. You can actually have Feculent Gnarlmaws sprouting up across the battlefield, especially if you have Horticulous Slimux in your army. who can actually bring them. You know, he can actually make them sprout up.
Did I tell you I got one of the Nurgle trees?
Oh, have you? Have you actually got one of them?
I've got the Nurgle tree, and it has been heavily converted to be a tree of death.
Oh,
I need to actually take some photos of it to show it off. I've just remembered that I've built this thing and never done anything with it. So I'll have to take some photos.
Do you really want to anger Father Nurgle in that way?
My undead army is basically built upon insults. I'm not joking. The way I've thought about it is, and I'm not sure how. I want to go back to the Drachenfels idea for my undead army. I know I've kind of derailed the conversation a little bit, but I'll get back to it.
Oh, it's all right.
Get back to it in a minute. One of the things I love about Drachenfels in the book is that he takes time in trying to piss you off in a really nonchalant manner. Where you can imagine it's like, oh, I'm sorry, that made you angry? I didn't realise.
Yeah. It's almost passive-aggressive, isn't it?
So a lot of what's gone into this army is been insulting other armies. So for example, my Graveguard are all wearing really crappy Stormcast armour, and they've all got demon heads. So they've got plague bearer skulls and bloodletter skulls as their heads.
Just to annoy it's to cause the maximum insult to the maximum number of armies as possible, isn't it?
Yes. I've got Orruk skeletons. I've got Zangor skeletons. I'm going to try and get as many different skeletons in there as possible.
Goat boys.
Because yes.
I love my goat boys.
I've got some goat boys, actually. The entire idea is I want
they're lovely.
I want the Horde of Drachenfels to be an insult to every other army it plays against.
Well, it's a good time to be doing it, isn't it? Because, of course, the books have just been re-released as well.
I know, and even though I've got a copy, it is very beat up, and I'm tempted to get myself a second one. Well, I say
yeah. It's what people wanted, isn't it? People voted for this, by all accounts, and this is the one that they wanted. They wanted the Drachenfels books.
Yes. I'm hoping Silver Nails gets a re-release because I've discovered that I'm actually missing my copy of Silver Nails.
You're missing Silver Nails, right?
I need to get.
That's the one with the best cover as well.
Yes, without a doubt. So it's
I love Genevieve on the front of that. It's brilliant.
I love Genevieve. Genevieve is an amazing character.
Just Genevieve in general.
She is fantastic.
Although she has moved on now, hasn't she? She's part of other mythologies now.
She went into the Dracula series, didn't she?
The Anno Dracula series, yeah. So there's this cross-miscegenation between AOS and Kim Newman's Anno Dracula series. That's just the most wonderful thing ever, ladies and gentlemen. It makes me very, very, very happy indeed.
I want Games Workshop to get Kim Newman in to do some Age of Sigmar work. Imagine what that man would create.
Oh, that would be loads of fun. I would love to see him do it. I don't think he ever would. No. But I would love to see that because I'm a big fan of Kim Newman. I really like his books and I really like his other work as well. You know, I think he's got a good old head on when it comes to horror and fantasy and science fiction. I think he's very knowledgeable, and I just think he's good at what he does. You know. To
completely sidetrack this conversation even further.
Anyway.
Yeah. You know the film The Prestige.
I know it very, very well indeed.
You know when...
You thought it was him, didn't you? You thought it was him.
I thought for a split second that Christian Bale in the makeup was Kim Newman.
I just had a flash. I had an image of the character and I was like, I know what he's going to say. And I could see it. Yeah. I could actually see it. I mean... It wouldn't surprise me in the least if it was. It's not, but it would not surprise me if it was.
It's the type of thing Kim Newman would do. Hang on.
It is. There is a. You know, just to sidetrack even further, there is a similar thing that goes on with the original Hellraiser. You know, the bum that eats the locusts.
Yes. Yeah.
People think, and people are still convinced to this day that is Clive Barker.
Really?
Yeah, and I, you know what? Looking at him, I'm looking at photographs of Clive around that era. You know, when he's all sort of fresh-faced, young Liverpudlian. Mm-hmm. It does look like him. He says it's not, that it's someone else, but I tell you what, it looks a hell of a lot like him.
Ah, man, imagine if it was. It's just one of those things.
That'd be wonderful.
I want it to be an urban myth that's true. Because
me too. I'm very tempted to put it about as though it is true. To insist that it is true, just to see what people's reactions are.
You're just going to cease and desist from Clive Barker. Stop it.
Yes. I was not the bum. Stop it.
There's just this telegram.
Anywho,
it's a proper telegram, old-fashioned telegram. That just says "Stop it."
Yeah. I would treasure that forever. Any communication from Clive Barker, I would treasure forever, quite frankly. I'm a huge Barker fan. Anyway, Malign Portents. Yes. What were we talking about?
I can't remember. Let's get on to the Daughters of Cain, because the Daughters of Cain blow my mind.
Yeah. Me too. It's that classic Games Workshop thing. They came out of left field, had no idea they were coming, and suddenly there are these snake women everywhere. And it's glorious. It's glorious. Suddenly, the only hint we had was in the Malign Portents when there was that video where Morothai was talking about Slaanesh and about the rise of something dark and evil, which is obviously Nagash. And I mean, a lot of people didn't get that it was Morothai because it never makes it explicit. I did, because she said certain things and I was like, and she was referencing what happened to her in the end times, and I was sort of like, oh, I know who that is. How did she get out of Slaanesh? Do I want to know how she got out of Slaanesh?
I love the idea. I mean, I'm assuming that you've got White Dwarf as well for this month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly have.
Right, so there's a bit in it. I've got it next to me here, so I'm just going to quickly try and find it. Here it is. Having been vomited forth by Slaanesh, Morathi has become tainted by her contact with him, made monstrous in form and size, bat-like wings sprout from her shoulders, and venomous snakes take the place of her hair. Vomited forth.
Vomited forth, yeah.
So she
nice, because the last we saw of her,
that
of
made
course,
him throw her up.
Yeah, she gave him a bellyache, essentially. I mean, and she was in him for a long time. She was in there for a long, long time, so she had opportunity. She certainly had opportunity. It's interesting, though, because Morothai's loyalties changed like you wouldn't believe. Early on, she was the ultimate priestess of Cain. Then it turns out she was part of the cult of Slaanesh. Yep. Now she's not loyal to anything other than her own ascension. That seems to be the case. I mean, it's something we were talking about before, but I love, one of the things I adore, beyond the aesthetics, beyond the models, is the new dynamic of this army, of the Daughters of Cain. Essentially the Dark Elves that were. It's that Morothai has come out of Slaanesh, and she has realised that in this new state of play, mortals can become gods. Yeah? So her son has done exactly that. I mean, Malarion, Malekith that was, has become the manifestation of all shadow.
Yes.
And it seems like he's going to be a passive force in AOS. It seems like we're not going to get like a model of him or anything. I think he's going to be one of the more abstract deities, at least for a little while anyway. And I think Morothai is going to be the big miniature, the sort of Nagash equivalent for the Dark Elves. What she's realised is, I don't need to worship anyone for my own gain. In fact, it's in my best interests not to worship anyone and to betray all of my loyalties. So what she's done, she's taken the other the Dark Elves that were the souls that Slaanesh were torn out of Slaanesh by Tyrion and Teclis, and has reshaped them into a sort of form of the Brides of Cain. Yeah. So she has re-established Cain worship in the realms. However, what she knows and what the worshippers of Cain don't know is that Cain is dead. That aspect, that god, doesn't exist anymore. And in fact, she is keeping him from being reborn. She is actually any rite of blood, any act of violence, any religious prayer that the Daughters of Cain utter or commit, the power doesn't go to Cain, it goes to her.
Yep.
She's siphoning it off and is trying to become a god. That's her ultimate ambition. So she is playing the most dangerous game. The most dangerous game possibly in all of AOS. Because if she fails, she's not going to have an ally in the entire system.
No, she's not.
I can't imagine Malarion is going to take kindly to this. Slaanesh is almost certainly going to be hungering to have her back already. Nagash and Sigmar and all the other established gods are not going to be happy about another deity rising and having to share their realms and their energies and whatnot. The Chaos gods obviously are going to be pissed off about this. Yeah, she, and not only that, but her allies, the ones she commands, if they realize that Kain doesn't exist anymore and everything they're doing is a lie, that she is essentially conning them, they're going to slaughter her.
Yes. The interesting thing that gets me about Morathi is that she has taken this idea of her son became a god and how she wants to become a god, and she takes these steps to become a god, and she is single-minded and obsessed with the idea of becoming a god. All other things are thrown to the wayside. This one singular passion that burns brightly within her, and that is the only guide, that is the only thing that she has in her life, is this one burning obsession, this passion. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Because
it does indeed.
That is the most Slaaneshi thing we have seen in Age of Sigmar to date, and I love it. And I love the fact that no one's come out and said it. It's just, it's more than her physical form's been corrupted.
Yeah, absolutely. She is probably, I mean, it may emerge that Slaanesh let her out.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I think that's the case.
It may emerge that there was a conscious thing going on here, and that she's being deluded. You know, that this power that she's siphoning may in fact go to Slaanesh and may in fact be the thing that ends up freeing him.
Boom. Yes, that's exactly where I'm going with it.
I've got a funny feeling that might be the case. Yeah. I mean, you know what? All credit to Morathi. She's been through some shit.
Oh yeah.
Of all of the characters that have survived from like the old days, she's been through some real hell. She's been devoured by the god that she worshipped. She's been endlessly twisted and transformed and tormented by him. I mean, you can't even imagine. And actually, the fluff that does exist, the background that does exist, it kind of glosses over what happened to her. All it says is something like she was abused and tortured and twisted and tormented eternally in the belly of Slaanesh until she found her way out. So you can hardly imagine, can you? You cannot imagine what she endured in there. And it seems to have either focused her or driven her mad, or a combination of the two.
I think it's probably a little of column A, a little of column B. What you've got now is... because the Morathi that exists now, there is only the base traits of what Morathi was. You know, the old Morathi was a lot more insidious, whilst also usually quite hysterical whilst being insidious. She was content to sit in the background and play the puppet master, whilst Malekith did all the bits and bobs. You know, whilst he was going out and doing the raids and he was following her plan. What you're seeing now... He
was more like the active agent, wasn't he? You know?
What you've got now is she has come out front and foremost, and she is there. She is the pinnacle of what the Daughters of Kain are, and she's the thing that's going to be pushing them, and not from the background. The rules for her, she is first and foremost on the battlefield. I mean, let's actually talk about her.
I love the rules.
Let's talk about her on the battlefield.
I love the rules for her. She's amazing. Really is. Yeah. I love it. I'm not sure, but I do think it's the first time we've had it where a miniature transforms into another miniature. Am I right? Unless you count... The only thing I can think of is are pink horrors, you know, that split into blue horrors, then split into brimstone horrors when they're wounded. That's the only thing I can think of. The true form of Morathi is the big snake thing. Yeah. It's the big sort of demon gorgon thing. That's her true form. But she is quite vain still. She's still retained this vanity. And so she masks herself. She sort of uses her power to transform herself into sort of like a semblance of what she was before. She's still not quite there. She's still quite demonic in that form.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is the smaller form of her is more fragile and less sort of straightforward. It's more of like a buffing agent. So if you want to play the army with lots of buffs, then you keep her in that form. However, when she's wounded, or if you just want to do it, if you want to initiate the transformation, there's a chance that she will explode into her true form, which is this massive snake-like winged gorgon thing, which is a monster. It's an absolute monster on the battlefield. It's like a greater demon, essentially. That's what it is. It's like a demon prince or a greater demon, which just rampages and destroys everything. So she's really interesting to play. Really interesting. You can sort of switch the way you play with her as the game progresses, or you're going to be forced to switch when she's wounded. So the dynamic of the Daughters of Cain has suddenly become tactically really fascinating. Really fascinating. And now you have all of these new units too. You have like the Nagas and the new Harpies, whose names I can't remember now.
1 second.
It's wonderful.
I'll soon tell you, because I've got it right open next to me. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. The Melisai and the Canary.
That's it, the Canary. The Canaries,
yes,
yeah, why not?
The Daughters of Cain Canaries.
The Canaries. The Canaries, yeah. The whole dynamic of the army has shifted massively. It's really interesting it's just fascinating. And also aesthetically gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this for me ticks my boxes. This is one of the armies I really like, and could potentially be my first non-chaos AOS force.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm tempted, and I don't want to be tempted
me too.
because I have enough to. There's enough I need to get caught up on, and stuff that I want to do and stuff I want to get. But the Naga tales have conjured up like 15 different ideas for conversion work, and I don't need it.
Oh, me too. I mean, my can you imagine my Severed Angels, my Slaanesh Chaos Space Marine force?
Yeah.
This is Christmas. This is Slaaneshmas for them. What can I mean? The Morathai model alone. Just demon princes, greater demons, just the potential for conversion is insane. The Nagas, I could do proper like Slaanesh bikers, which are not Slaanesh bikers, they're Nagas, they're like Naga centaurs with Chaos Space Marine bot torsos. You know? It's just it's Slaaneshmas.
There's a part of me that wants
wonderful.
to go and get a box of what the hell are they called now? Yes, they're still called Sauruses, aren't they? Sauruses and a box of these things, and put the reptilian bodies on the top, and then start putting like gills and things on them, and make a very reptilian style Naga, and just having them as little creatures to run around in scenario games. It's I don't need it.
The raw fun.
Yeah.
I mean, the raw fun of this army is insane. And again, blindsided by it. Totally blindsided by it. Did not see it coming.
No.
And it's a very welcome surprise. But another thing the miniatures range has done for me has kind of put paid to some of the silliness about, Games Workshop and Slaanesh and how it's difficult to market and whatnot. I mean, these miniatures they're very definitely female. They're very definitely Slaanesh inspired. There's a very Slaanesh aesthetic, and it's overt. It's totally overt, and I really like it. And I think this is what we're going to see moving forward. I would not be surprised to see those same aesthetics carried forward into a future Slaanesh release.
Agree entirely. Did you notice in this month's White Dwarf about the Demonettes? Did you see the Demonette?
I haven't yet. No, I only just flicked through it. I haven't sort of sat down and had a proper read of it yet.
See if I can find it again, and I'm just struggling, and I don't want to spend too much time in looking. But there's some Demonettes in the background of a picture, and I was looking at them, and I was thinking, I don't think that they're the old Demonettes. Now, because of the picture...
Stop it, Adam.
It's very difficult to tell. Like,
Oh, stop it.
Really difficult to tell. But I don't think they're the old Demonettes. And I don't think just trying to find it now. There's nothing worse than trying to find something whilst you're under pressure.
I know, man. But if that's true, I mean, for my money, I actually don't like the current Demonettes very much. They're not to my tastes when it comes to the Demonettes.
Yeah.
For my money, they need to be much more dynamic. They need to be much more sort of leaping and dancing and, gamboling all over the place rather than just statically standing. And also, they're too ugly.
I agree.
They're way too ugly. I mean, for my money, they're a very difficult thing to get right, the Demonettes. I think they're a very difficult thing to get right because they've got to be simultaneously beautiful and demonic.
They've got to be enthralling yet repellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is.
I mean, I know a lot of people didn't. It is. A lot of people don't like them, but I really liked the Demonettes that came out. The ones that came out around the 3.5 Codex that had the sort of like tentacles for hair and whatnot. I really liked them. I thought they kind of fit the aesthetic beautifully. We'll never see, although they did re-release them, didn't they, as part of their that limited range that they sometimes do. I know because I got a box of them. I got a whole box of them, which I was most pleased about.
To be honest with you, the Demonettes that I always think of when I think of Demonettes is the old Hammer ones, basically the old lead ones that are just
the really old ones.
Yeah. I mean, I'm showing my age here.
The ones that have got like the big bulbous eyes and the frills on their heads and the tails. The ones that have still got tails.
They have indeed. And I think the reason for that is that there is a Demonette in the Conrad trilogy. And when I can't remember the name of the author now, but when describing what happens between the Demonette and and Conrad, it is incredibly repellent, but he does a very good job of drawing you into it. That this Demonette is cutting him, but also lovingly touching him with her tail, and that's the image that's always in my head. Yeah.
It's not the grossest thing, though. There is a grosser thing in the Maggotkin book, and that is the origins of one of the Pox. The Pox Walkers or the Pox Riders. The Maggoth Riders, the big guys. One of them, his Orgot's demon spew. His background is vile. It's. Do you know this? Orgot's background.
I don't actually know.
He's basically, his whole shtick is that he's half demon, right?
Right.
He's kind of like a pseudo-demon, and he's angered by the fact that he's not full demon and that he can't walk the Garden of Nurgle. He's condemned to the mortal realms because he has half a mortal lineage. And part of the reason for that, it states it right here, he is the result of an unholy union between a great unclean one and a mortal witch.
Oh, God.
Can you even... just... What?
No.
Can you even?
Well...
Can you even?
Well, you've been to Wolverhampton. You know what Wolverhampton is.
Yes, and I know full well your feelings on it.
So, I can believe it's true because I've been to Wolverhampton. So I believe that...
Bloody hell.
I believe that unclean ones and witches can have children.
I can't even... I mean, for one thing, the dynamics of it. How did they even, like do anything without the Great Unclean One crushing her?
Well, he just took it off and gave it to her.
I mean... Oh, God. Just the... Ew. So, the notion that Games Workshop is moving away from this material somehow, they're not.
No, they're not.
They're not. Because that is more overt than anything I've ever seen in a Slaanesh story, I can tell you.
I'm going to do my best to try and not think about this anymore, because it's an image that I've now got stuck in my head and it won't leave. So, thanks, George.
Orgot's demon spew. Grossest thing in possibly all of AOS history. All of Warhammer's history, probably.
Yeah, I'm struggling to think of anything worse, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too.
Let's move on.
It's just like, first of all, I mean, yeah, let's. I could get kind of obsessive about this. I almost want to write the story. I almost want to write the story and send it into the Black Library for their open. They're having their open season at the moment. I almost want to write it and see what feedback I get. It's like, this maybe isn't for us. You might want to try another market with this one.
I think you should. I think you should write that and send it in. Because the worst that'll happen is they won't speak to you ever again. So...
Ever again, yes. I may sort of alienate myself from that entire market. So, yeah.
Maybe not then.
Brilliance. Absolute brilliance.
So what's been happening...
But yes, that's pretty much...
What's been
That's pretty much what's been happening in AOS.
What's been happening in 40k, George?
Oh, God, so much. So much. I wish they'd stop. I can't keep up. I've actually, for the first time ever, I've actually fallen behind.
Yeah.
One of the most significant things is we had the Custodes released. The Adeptus Custodes are now an army, which is really fascinating to me. I mean, that is absolutely fascinating. To anyone who has been part of the 40k hobby for any length of time, the fact of having the Adeptus Custodes as a playable army and having them actually wandering around the current state of play in 40k is insane.
It is, isn't it?
I can't quite wrap my head around it.
No, me neither.
It's too big. It's too big. I cannot get that these guys that are like they're so powerful. They're so like well equipped and genetically engineered that they've only ever been part of the background before. Yeah. They've never really been a playable force outside of like the Horus Heresy games. To have them operating in the 40k universe is insane, and it's brilliant. I love it. I love the fact they're out there. And I love the fact why. I like the fact that Roboot went to them and basically said, look, stop sitting on your gold-plated arses, minding what is essentially a corpse now, and get out there.
Go and get some bloody work done, you bunch of slackers.
Go. Yeah, we need you, for God's sake. Look at the state of the universe. I mean, look at it. Yeah. They're definitely needed. I mean, look at the state of it. They're definitely needed. They're also very interesting because they're one of those codices that does function as a standalone codex, but isn't necessarily meant to.
Yeah.
They're like the Death Watch, or the Demons, which we also had recently. They're not really a standalone army. They're designed to be an ally codex, if anything. I mean, you can play them as a standalone force, but they struggle. They struggle not because there's anything wrong with the units. The units, I mean, unit by unit basis, they're probably one of the strongest armies in 40k. They will just massacre anything that comes up against them. That's up to including things like Demon Princes and Khorne Berserkers and Greater Demons and whatnot. But they struggle because they've got such a limited range of units, and they're highly specialized. They're highly specialized, very like the Grey Knights. They're very like the Grey Knights. Highly elite, highly limited model range. So you have to really think about how you use them.
What I've really enjoyed seeing is when they first got announced, you saw a lot of pushback against them. Why do people want this? And then the book hit, and people went, these are amazing, and I want 70 million.
Yeah. You know what it was? It was the miniatures that did it.
Yes, I think so.
People just went gaga for those miniatures because they obviously felt that this was something special. You can tell by the effort that's been put into them. They are these obscenely over elaborate looking Space Marine type warriors, but so far removed from them as to be something almost entirely other. They're beautiful. I mean, they are absolutely beautiful miniatures. And they actually do look like something from a bygone age, don't they?
They do. They look like they've stepped right out of some John Blanche paintings. They are...
Yeah.
They tickle me in the way that I used to feel when I first got into Warhammer way back when. As much as I'm not going to buy them because I don't need any more armies. I don't need anything else sitting over me going, paint me. You haven't painted me yet. I have enough to get through.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
And for God's sakes, my other half got me a copy of Hero Quest. The original Hero Quest. 100% complete.
Awesome.
I didn't know this was coming. It just arrived at my door. I said, Abby, you've got a really big package. She said, open it. And then I was giddy for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine.
all of that to paint.
You've got to bring it to TF Nation or something, Adam.
Oh yes, without a doubt.
We've got to have a game, man. We've got to have a game. I want to be the wizard.
Yeah, I just want to play Hero Quest.
I like the wizard. Best thing about Hero Quest is the barbarian.
I was talking.
It's not.
I was talking the other day. Yeah, just to be real.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, the bard. He's a good man. He's the bard.
Oh, so cool. Cool.
I'm not going to say any more than that. Tee-hee-hee. But yeah, I really like the all the stuff that's coming out for the Custodes, but I can't do it. I can't pull the trigger. I've come to the conclusion that the only 40k army I'm going to buy is when the Gene Sealer cult comes around again. And
you know what? They're imminent too.
Yeah.
They're imminent. I mean, the fact they've released them for Necromunda, they're coming. And that they are one of my favourite Xenos forces in all of 40k. That's a must-buy. That will be, I don't care if it's like the end of the month and I don't have any money. It's just going to be like, lay down those shekels. I will have that. Thank you very much.
I mean, there is a part of me that is wanting desperately to get into the Tyranid, but it's, at the moment, AOS is the thing that has me. 40k is great.
I'm not surprised.
No. It's, I've always been more of a fantasy player than a 40k
I'm not surprised.
player.
I mean, but also, I mean, because last year was so dominated by 40k and AOS took such a back step. It really did. They're trying to reverse that this year. So there's so much going on. Like it's so dynamic right now in AOS. The wider story is so dynamic. But I mean, I'm really happy for Imperial players in 40k at the moment. I'm really happy for them because they've got such a wide range of army builds now. With your Astra Militarium, your various Space Marine codices that are out there now. You've got your Grey Knights, you've got your Adeptus Custodes, you've got your Mechanicum books. Yep. You can put together like these wonderful, scrappy, almost like Crusade-style forces that have little bits of everything, like detachments from all over the place. And it could make for like this John Blanche artwork style army, where you've got everything all thrown together. It could be so much fun.
You've just talked me into starting an Imperial army, George. Thanks. Thanks. The idea of a bit of everything in there, all mixed up together, just...
Yep.
It's the word crusade that got me. God damn your eyes.
Why not? I mean, it could be so much fun. And you know what? White Dwarf is bad for this as well. Like the Blanchetsu armies.
Yes.
If anything could ever make me make an Imperial army, it would be one of them, because the people who feature in the Blanchetsu stuff, they go to town. They go to town customizing the army and moving it really far away from the established background, making it something really dirty and sort of massively dystopian and wonderful.
Shut up, George.
I know, sorry. I'm sorry. But moving on, we've also... don't get me wrong, we Chaos players are making out like bandits as well, because we've had the Demons Codex, which is essentially the inverse of the Custodes Codex. It's almost like the dark equivalent of it. Which again is not really designed to be played on its own. You can do it, and it's a decent enough army if you want to do it. It's certainly not what it used to be. When it was almost like the Power Gamers army of choice.
Yeah.
It's not that anymore. They've toned them down quite significantly in that regard. But they are really quite a wonderful force. Some lovely little stratagems going on in there. But what I really like about it more than anything is what they've done with the background, which is it focuses more on the great game, on the dynamics between the Chaos powers and the relationship that they share with one another. Right. So these lovely little throwaway little bits of background. Like, for example, the fact that Khorne loves the orcs.
Yeah, I love that.
Khorne's got a real soft spot for the orcs, apparently, to the point whereby he actively draws them into his realm, in the realm of chaos, so that they can fight for him forever for his amusement. And apparently, the orcs that are drawn into Khorne's realm are very, very, very happy with that, because that's what they want. They want war without end, and that's what they get. So they're just endlessly respawning, dying and respawning on the battlefields that surround Khorne's throne, which is awesome.
That ties into something we're going to talk about at the end of the show. Well, or at least something we're going to do at the end of the show.
Lovely.
So I don't want to get into it too much, but I love the idea that Orcs and Chaos have this relationship currently going that is... The Orcs don't seem to be getting corrupted, or at least not yet. That might be something that happens.
Well, they're quite immune to chaos, aren't they? By all accounts, Orcs are really immune to the corruption of chaos. They're not totally immune. You can get chaos corrupted Orcs, but they're just not prey to it in the same way that human beings or even Eldar are.
Yeah, it's because they've got a very simple... To be honest with you, the two things that Orcs are probably going to fall down on is either the Battle of Khorne or the obsession of Slaanesh, which conjures up all sorts of interesting ideas of a Slaaneshi Orc warband. And God...
Slaaneshi Orc warband,
and
wow.
oh God damn it, I didn't need to have that thought.
No, that's a weird one. Pink Orcs. Why not? Pink Orcs.
See, I'm actually more thinking of like... the Orcs themselves have become all multicoloured, so there's just all these different, almost like tiger stripes, but like green and purple or something like that.
Orcs being Orcs, though.
Yeah.
You'd get the ones of different colours fighting all the time.
Oh, you would, yeah.
Orcs being Orcs, you know?
I could call them Sorks. Slorks.
Slorks, I like that. That's brilliant. Slorks.
We are the Slorks and we like to fight. Yeah. Moving on quickly.
Awesome. Moving on. Yes, we've also, the biggest thing for me in 40k undoubtedly has been the release of the Thousand Sons Codex, which came out at the same time as the Adeptus Custodes. Again, a bit of a blindside. We knew it was coming, we just didn't know it was this soon. I would have expected it more towards the end of the year myself, or at least sort of in the second half of the year. But by God, am I pleased. Am I pleased about it? I so am. Of course, it didn't really require that much on Games Workshop's part because the miniatures, they've already had their miniatures range update a couple of years back with the Wrath of Magnus stuff, and their Primarch is already out, so they didn't have to do as much as they did with the Death Guard, so. But that doesn't mean that the Codex is a bit of a slouch, but far from it. I think this is my favourite of the Chaos Codexes, and that makes it probably my favourite Codex ever, to be perfectly honest. I've always adored the Thousands. Yeah, I know, right? I've always adored the Thousand Sons. They've always been one of my favourite legions. They've always been shit. Like, in terms of gameplay, in terms of the way army building, all of that, they've always been crap. They've always had real problems with their core units. They've always been over expensive. They've never had a slot. They've never had a sort of place in the game system that's worked for them.
Yeah.
Totally not the case anymore. You know what they've done with it? They've gone for just like the weirdness of the Thousand Sons. Do you know how with the Death Guard they emphasised the darkness of them and the absolute hideousness of the Death Guard? Yeah. They've gone the opposite with these guys. If you pick up the Death Guard Codex and the Thousand Sons Codex and read them side by side, just as the Death Guard is all of these muted browns and greens and sort of really drear and hideous colours, Thousand Sons Codex, it just explodes off the page. Everything is surreal and mental and strange, and it's to the point whereby some of the images in it, you've got to look at them for a while before you can figure out what's going on.
Right, okay.
Especially the images of Sorciarius. The images of what's going on Sorciarius are mental, because the planet's always in flux. It's the architecture, the cities, the buildings, they're all changing all the time. The state of the world is shifting endlessly. So it is lunacy. The Thousand Sons exist in this state of perpetual madness, and they've learned how to cope with it. Some of them have just surrendered and gone absolutely bonkers. But that's what they've emphasised with them. They've tried to go for a very different style of horror with the Thousand Sons, which is just surreal. It's like LSD trip madness, hallucinogenic lunacy. That's what you face when you face them on the battlefield. It's something you can't predict, something you can't even perceive clearly. They can get into your mind and they can alter your states of perception. They can weave time around themselves. They can actually alter the flow of fate and destiny. So it's such a weird army to put together and to face and to play. I had my first game with them recently, and I tell you what, they play gorgeously now.
Yeah.
They play gorgeously. The psychic phase, no one can out-Izzy Wizzy the Thousand Suns. No one.
Izzy Wizzy Araman gets
they
busy.
Are absolutely, yeah. Every game I come to, I want to get one of those Harry Potter ones so that I can wave it around every game I come to and tap it on the table, you know?
Yeah.
And a big wizard's hat. That's what I want, a really big wizard's hat. And anyone who plays against me, just forgive me if I keep shouting abracadabra or alakazam or Izzy Wizzy let's get busy or all that stuff, because I just can't help it. They are psychically not only the most powerful army in the game, they just railroad everything in the psychic phase. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're really fun. They don't just the old versions of the Thousand Suns were always very aggressive in the psychic phase. They always emphasized throwing out lots of damage. That was what they did. And they can do that now. But they've got loads of other things going on as well. Like there are powers that debilitate the enemy, that slow down movement, that make it so that units can't charge or assault, that heal wounds. You can actually heal multiple wound models now with a temporal distortion. Very handy to have on Magnus, I must say. They also have access to 3 psychic disciplines. 3 full psychic disciplines. It's crazy. It's absolutely mental. Goat boys everywhere. We've got lots of Zarngor flying about now, which is wonderful. There are loads of different ways of structuring the army. If you want to have this weird, almost AOS style army in 40k, you can do it with the Thousand Suns. You can actually do it. You can make an assault-oriented Thousand Suns army. How weird is that?
Yeah, those words don't go together. At all.
It's very strange. What they've tried to do, because there is a tendency for the Thousand Suns to be a bit like the Death Guard dynamically, you know?
Yeah.
To be like there's, resilient blocks of infantry. That's the Death Guard's thing now. What they've done with the Thousand Suns is made them way more mobile, made them way more dynamic, and not in the way that other armies are mobile. So they're not mobile in the same way that the Aldari are mobile.
No.
They don't use jet bikes or anything like that. They use psychic powers. So they'll be using things like warp time from the Dark Hereticus discipline. They'll be using nasty, naughty little tricks that they've got. There are artifacts that allow them to... You can basically take units off of the battlefield and set them up somewhere else on the battlefield using it, which is very naughty. Very naughty indeed. They use the webway.
Right, okay.
Because there are stratagems that allow them to use the webway. So they don't even make planetfall. They just rip portals in the stuff of reality and march through. It's brilliant. It takes a long time to learn how to use them because it's all about the psychers. It's all about the psychers. You want as many sorcerers floating around as possible. But I only realized recently, after I played them, that their army-wide trait, their legion trait, if you like, is Brotherhood of Sorcerers. Mm-hmm. And what all that does, it's a very simple little rule that on paper it looks okay, but doesn't look like anything. It just adds 6 inches to any psychic powers they cast. That's it. But when you start playing and you realize that there are psychers everywhere in this army, the footprint, the gauge of influence for their psychic powers in any one turn because of that extra 6 inches is insane. And the fact they're highly mobile. Almost all of the psychers in this army, they either have wings or they have discs of Zeech, so they can fly about and position themselves wherever they need to be. You can lock the enemy in these grids of psychic lunacy. You have to sort of think about what it looks like on the battlefield, how your psychic powers sort of spread across the battlefield to get the most out of them. And if you can perceive that, if you can picture it in your mind, you can wreak absolute havoc from turn one. It's brilliant. I mean, I'm so pleased with the way they play. I am so pleased. And you've got Magnus, of course. We've got Magnus.
Oh, yes.
Who they've rejigged from his index version, which I'm really pleased about, because the index version was unbeatable. He was ridiculous. The ability to re-roll invulnerable saves of 1 for him was just insane. They've removed that now, thankfully. So he relies on his psychic powers to get him by. But as a psyker, he's insane. He's a big flying psychic tank, is what he is. That's what you use him as. I mean, you can do lots of things with him, obviously, depending on what psychic powers you give him. But the way I'd be tempted to use him, just give him every offensive psychic power you can and just let him go.
Yeah. It sounds like
use your exalted sorcerers or sorry, go on.
I was going to say that it sounds like the Thousand Sons have just bounced right up the army list, that they've become what they always should have been, which is a terrifying prospect on the battlefield, rather than just another Chaos Warrior warband.
I think they've become prime, not only in terms of the game system, and I could see how you could make some killer army lists from this. Believe me, there are some nasty. Using some detachments and using like lots of psychers, you could make some evil armies from this. But also in terms of the background, they're so influential now, because of course they're one of the few Chaos armies that is operating actively and in its entirety in the material universe.
Of course they are, yes. So,
Sorciarius is now in the material universe. And the cults of the Thousand Sons, which this goes into explicit detail exploring. So, the old cults of Prospero? Yeah. That have been established in the Horus Heresy books, so like the Athenaeans, the Rapturae, the Pavanae, all of those guys that all had different like psychic disciplines. There are perverted and corrupted versions of them still at large in the Thousand Sons, but now they've become wholly more Zetian. So now they're not the Athenaeans and the Pavanae and all that stuff. Now they are the cult of time. They're the cult of deception. They're the cult of mutation. They're the cult of magic, the cult of knowledge, and each one is a very loosely formulated segment of the Thousand Sons, which has multiple warbands fighting within it. That's another thing the book goes into explicit detail about. They don't fight as one big unified force. There are loads of different little warbands of them that all have their own philosophies, their own beliefs, their own colour schemes, their own heraldry. Some of them are like exiles, they're outcasts that have been drawn back to Sorciarius. And it also makes the point that every single one of them, even if they think it or not, is operating within schemes that have been set forth by Magnus.
I'm loving all of this.
Yeah, so he is basically...
The internal narrative that's taking place with this force is immense. It's I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. They have been so far removed from being yet another Chaos force and have become very much their own character, which is the thing that always grabs me with the new 40k and the way the new 40k works. I'm amazed that they have been given that much.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like the Death Guard Codex. They clearly did not want this to just be, Chaos Force X.
Yeah.
They wanted these guys to have so much of their own character. And whoever wrote this book loves these guys, you can tell. They've got such passion for it. And they have become so deeply and densely characterized. It's like we were saying before, these books have turned me completely. Beforehand, I would have said that maybe you could have done them all in one book if the book was good enough. No, the way to do Chaos, the way to do most of the forces, I think now, is to give the subsections their own books. it gives them space to breathe. It not only gives them space to breathe in terms of the army lists and makes them much more workable and much more interesting and dynamic, it gives the background space to breathe. You can actually you can dive into this weirdness, you can dive into this stuff that's so detailed and so idiosyncratic, so much a part of this force that you just don't have space for in a polyglot codex or a polyglot book.
I think that's always been the problem with the Chaos Marines books, hasn't it? That they've always been combined into one. And now that you've got this, which is, here is the Thousand Suns in all of their glory, with all the space that we've got to be able to play around and show you what the Thousand Suns are. You've got...
Absolutely.
You've got to wonder why they never did this in the past.
Yeah, it seems such an obvious thing now.
It does,
doesn't it? It seems such an obvious thing to do, but it never came about for whatever reason. I mean, I've just turned to a page, The Planet of the Sorcerers, massive double-page spread that's got it's got a picture of the Tower of Magnus, you know, the tower with the eye in it. Yeah. That's there. But surrounding it, you've got Tizca. The actual city of Tizca from Prospero is on Sorciarius. When Magnus ripped the Thousand Suns from the material universe after he had his back broken by Lehman Russ, he ripped the entire city of Tizca into the warp with him.
That's amazing.
And now it's the capital city of Sorciarius. How cool is that?
That is.
How fantastic is that? We've got descriptions of what life is like on the planet of the Sorceress here, you know, with like the roaming covens of Zarngor across the shifting plains and all that stuff. What it's like for mortals on the planet of the Sorceress. It drives most of them mad. It drives the vast majority of them mad. It is so, so cool. The dynamic between Ahriman and Magnus is made very explicit in this book, you know, how they regard one another and how they operate with regards to one another. It's very, very cool. And you've got these little asides. The one thing that's actually not in the Death Guard book, which is kind of a shame, there are these little asides by Thousand Suns themselves who are talking about how they perceive themselves. So there's this guy here, he's saying something like, they flee from the horrors I bring about, they fear the mutations I wreak on their flesh. Do they see beauty in the chaos I create? No, for Tzeentch has not opened their all-seeing eye.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's so cool. They perceive themselves in this very particular way, the Thousand Suns, as though they are agents of enlightenment. They don't regard themselves as negative, you know, they don't regard themselves as a negative force. It is not just a case of let the galaxy burn.
Yeah.
That's not what they're going for. They think they're agents of change. They think that they are bringing Tzeentch's enlightenment to the universe, to all of reality, and that by mutating their foes like into these hideous gribbly knots of flesh, they're actually bringing them a form of enlightenment.
It's the old thing, isn't it? Nobody ever truly sees themselves as evil. They always, every single person that can be described as evil in history, they were all people who were, they had an agenda. Now, for good or for evil, that agenda was theirs. But never did they wake up and think, well, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to be super evil.
No, absolutely. And it's just a lovely little character element that makes them more than they once were. I absolutely adore it. Every abomination is a creation of Tzeentch. Every twisted monstrosity a child of the Changer of Ways. If I could, I would devour the thoughts of them all, that I too might know the horror of their existence. But for me, there is a different fate. It's so cool. They operate on a state of being that is so far beyond anything else in 40k. They perceive more. They operate in this atemporal way. Even time isn't a restriction for them. They can manipulate time itself. It's fascinating. It's so, so cool.
Those little bits that you're talking about there, they actually remind me of something. And it's weird what they remind me of, because what they remind me of, I hated. They remind me of White Wolf. The old White Wolf RPGs.
Oh, the RPG system. Yeah.
Because all White Wolf stuff had bits of people talking about themselves. but it was always in the most 16-year-old way that a 16-year-old could 16-year-old. They were terrible. White Wolf is terrible. I'm putting that out there.
It was adolescent, essentially.
I'm just going to stick that on the table. White Wolf is terrible. Werewolf the Apocalypse is terrible. Vampire the Masquerade is terrible. Prometheus the Burning, or whatever it was called, is terrible. White Wolf is awful. But they sound to me like that idea. I'm sticking that on the table. White Wolf is awful. And I don't care who. Come at me, bro. White Wolf angers me in a very special way. And I don't even think it's the fault of the actual game system. I think there's just something in there that just irritates me in a very special way. But anyhow, it sounds like that's being done right, though, that instead of throwing a collection of words together, it is getting the feel of the fluff across in a very particular manner.
Yeah. They want you to know how they operate. They want you to know what they're like as characters before you know what they're like on the battlefield, because that sort of informs them. It informs how they operate. I mean, this is a wonderful thing. Hellbrutes are in this army, yeah? But obviously there's a conspicuous lack of flesh on Sorciarius to inter inside a Hellbrute. And they won't do it to the sorcerers because the sorcerers are too significant. They can't allow them to go insane inside a Hellbrute. So what they do is they unveil the sort of the seekers after knowledge and sorcerous power and enlightenment from other chaos warbands and legions, and they say, oh look, we have this incredible power that we can teach you. Come to Sorciarius and we will teach you these things. And for a time the aspirant feels as though, oh yes, I'm learning stuff, yes, this feels wonderful. What they don't realize is that their new masters are weaving them in these complex networks of spells and rites to prepare them for interment in a Hellbrute.
Oh, that's the type of horror that I love.
The Hellbrutes... the Hellbrutes of the Thousand Sons are actually the lunatic and betrayed aspirants of other legions.
That's amazing.
I love it.
Yes.
It's very naughty. It's very unpleasant, but that's what they do. That's what they do. You know what else I love in this book? It's only a tiny little thing, but I absolutely adore it. For the first time in an actual background book, Ahriman is named as Arzek Ahriman. He's got his first name from the Horus Heresy books.
I think that hasn't happened.
Which I really love.
I think the last time that happened was actually happened in the game. Would be right back when he first arrived.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think he's actually been called Arzek. He wasn't called Arzek until the Horus Heresy books. He was just called Ahriman at that point. In the same way that Abaddon... Abaddon was not called Ezekiel. He was called Ezekiel Abaddon in the first Horus Heresy book, the very first one, Horus Rising. But the new Chaos Codex does refer to him as Ezekiel Abaddon. Kalas Typhon. Typhon was just Typhon when he first came about in the 3.5 Codex. Now it's Kalas Typhon, which I'm so over the moon about. I just like it. I like the fact that his name is Arzek Ahriman. It just gives him a little bit more flavour. A little bit more flavour. It
makes him more relatable. Makes him more of a person rather than a tiny thing on the board.
Well, of all the Thousand Sons, he's the most relatable. Yes. Undoubtedly, because he is still trying. He's still trying to free his legion. He's still trying to undo the rubric of Ahriman.
I mean, I love Ahriman. I've got this weird fixation with him
Me too.
I pity him, but I can't help but applaud him because he doesn't ever stop. He's never given up.
No, I mean, regardless of what he suffers, of what, you know, the failures, the tragedies, the things that he's done, that he's led his legion to, I mean, he doesn't stop. He never stops. It's absolutely insane. It's insane. He's like... He's monomaniacal, isn't he? I mean, he is monomaniacal. But at the same time, I understand him, especially if you read the Ahriman series, John French's Ahriman series. You come out of that really liking him. Really liking him. He's a manipulative bastard. He betrays anyone that he feels it's salient to betray. You know, he doesn't have friends. He sees everyone as a means to an end. It's all he wants is his brothers back. That's all he wants. He wants his Legion back.
And
he'll do anything to get it.
I love him to bits. He's...
Anything.
Right, well, with that then, George, I've got one last thing that we need to do before we finish up for the morning. And that is, we've got a collection of questions to get through. And I think you're going to enjoy at least 2 of these 3 questions.
Okie dokie.
The first one comes from the Fluffenhammer Facebook, and it says, this is from Christopher Carlson. When are you guys going to talk about the Febuary?
Well, I mean, I know that you're very keen to talk about the Febuary at some point. I mean, we will, I'm sure. We will at some point, but it's going to be a short section, really, isn't it? Because there's not that much to talk about. They were one of the early races in Warhammer, and they went away very quickly. They were done away with very, 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 very quickly when the game started to crystallize. I like them a lot, actually. I do like the Febuary quite a lot. And my first exposure to them was in Hero Quest, which is the one-eyed lizard thing,
of course,
which I really like.
Yes.
But, I'm sure we will at some point.
I think one of the things I do want to do is get back to doing the spotlights. It's with the way that things changed for us and how we had to kind of adapt the Fluffenhammer going forward. Things have been very mutable, but we seem to be in a really good place now, and we're carrying on and we're getting the episodes out. So the spotlights are going to return. Now the question is, are we going to put the spotlights in the show, or are they going to be their own thing? Because we have been talking about doing satellite shows to go. We don't know yet. That is something that me and you need to sit down and kind of work out a real plan of attack for what we're doing going forward. But that is something that
absolutely.
We'll get to. But don't worry, we will be doing spotlights, and I will be spotlighting.
Yes, I do think you've been aching to talk about them since the first episode, haven't you? Really?
You have no idea how much I love the Febuary. The Febuary are fantastic. I love the Febuary, and the more I uncover about the Febuary, the more the story blows my mind.
The likelihood of them coming back isn't out of the question now in one way, shape, or form. It's not out of the question. Squats have come back. Beastmen, like Imperial Beastmen, have basically come back.
No.
So all bets, Fishmen have come back. All bets are off. All bets are off. I wouldn't even be surprised to see a Zote kit for the Gene Stealer cult. I honestly wouldn't.
I am convinced that Zotes are going to be making an appearance at some point, somewhere, somehow. Which will make me incredibly happy, because I love Zotes. I've got to admit, I do love the 40k version of Zotes more than I...
Stoats?
I want to see Warhammer Fantasy Stoats. Yeah. Stoat people.
Maybe a subspecies of the Skaven,
yes,
I'd assume.
Without a doubt.
Some form of beast.
It'll be Stoats riding chickens. That's the way it'll go.
Why not?
We are going to be talking about the Febuary at some point. We just need to work out how we're going to get the spotlights back up and running. Second question comes from YouTube, and it's from MK473624. I don't know. It's a whoever you are, fella. Your name confuses me. And he asks, really enjoyed the... Sorry, my phone just decided to switch off. Really enjoyed the annual Fluffies. I hope to see it again next year. Really enjoyed the batshits.
Fabulous.
My question is, though, if you could have done one for 3rd edition Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, what answers would you have given? Now, that's a really big question, and I don't think we're going to go through it. But I think what we'll do is we'll combine it down to, if we went back to 1996, where 3rd edition Warhammer, 3.5's out, and you've got 2nd edition 40k, I think, at that point, what would we have given it to? So what would we have given the best release of the year to?
What, in terms of best release of the year? Oh my god. I mean, the Falcon Grav tank. The first time we saw the Falcon Grav tank at the end of 2nd Ed, that was amazing. Nobody thought they could ever produce that. I mean, that was an insane thing. I remember the White Dwarf that featured it. In fact, it almost only had that in it. There was almost nothing else in it, even though that was the same month the Bloodthirster was released. The old metal
I remember
Bloodthirster?
That thing.
That Grav tank changed the state of play for vehicles in 40k and for big kits. There was nothing like it. I mean, it seems an odd thing, really. It seems a very odd thing, but it changed the state of play. for the way they produced models. That having what's essentially a vehicle with those curvatures, with that sort of organic feeling about it, and with movable parts and translucent parts, was insane. Nobody had seen anything like that. Nobody had seen anything like it.
I agree with it.
Oh, the Tyranids.
Yep.
Second bed.
The
Tyranids.
redesign of the Tyranids. Yep.
Just the Tyranids.
All of that.
And also dominated everything.
Oh, they really did.
I mean, they were the horror army. They were the horror army. You could face an army that consisted of just one or two screamer killers and you'd be terrified of it.
I think for myself... See, I was going to say the Tyranids, but you took that from me, so I'm going to have to think of something else really quickly.
Sorry,
no,
apologies.
It's fine. I think... I'm going to go...
I've got another one.
I'm going to go for Codex Orcs. Because that's the version of...
Codex Orcs?
Yeah, because that's the one that created the Fungus Orcs. That's the one that started putting together the idea that they were not just two-legged creatures that ran around and they were big, hard humans. They were a completely alien species. And when they started talking about the orc ecostructure, that's something that really sticks in my mind when it comes to orcs. So I'm going to go for Codex Orcs.
It was also the first one that introduced all the wacky and weird guns.
Well, I mean, they'd been kicking around for a while, but these are the ones that it solidified what these things did and what they were.
Yeah. Shock attack guns and stuff like that. Squig launchers and
weirdly enough,
all
the
of
shock
that
attack
nonsense.
guns have been around since the beginning of the Orcs in 40k. But
yeah, in some form or other.
But the squig launchers, Squig hounds.
So much fun. Squig hounds, Thraka and Makari, you know?
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Yeah, it's a lovely codex, that was. One of the very first ones as well, wasn't it? One of the very earliest codices,
it was
that
for,
was.
For that edition of 40k, yeah. It was such a beautiful book as well. I'm looking at it now. It's just sitting there on the side. It's like, so pretty.
I remember that was about the time I just started to get into it, and I do remember seeing it knocking about. It's a very, very cool book. And I love the armies of the orcs from back then. They look like explosions in a Lego factory.
Yes, they did. And the last question we've got is from Marcus24, once again from YouTube. And he asks, out of everything that you've seen from 40k and Age of Sigmar, what's the thing that you really want to happen next? And I think we've discussed that because we were talking about how Slaanesh is coming back, but Slaanesh is coming!
Yeah.
But what is the thing you'd like to see next?
What's the thing I'd like to see? Now, that's an interesting one. In AOS, in the Realms... I mean, the emergence of Slaanesh is an obvious one. I do want to see an emergence of Slaanesh. The thing with talking about that in the Realms is it's so much is going on and so out of left field. It's very difficult to determine where it's going to go, or like what the state of play is going to be in the next couple of years. So I honestly don't know. I would like to see more realms dedicated to particular gods or from particular sort of powers that have more character about them. So I would like to see more like Zechian cities and civilizations and see how they operate. I'd love to see more like Khornate tribes and Nurgle civilizations too. I would love to see Slaanesh civilizations. I would love to see how they operate. Realms within Sheesh, dominated by Nagash. More of that, please. That's the stuff I love. It's more the domestic stuff, almost like the role-playing stuff. I want to see more cities. I want to see more towns. I want to see more settlements. And also, in AOS, I want to see how weird it can get.
I want to see being pushed.
I want to see how... Yeah, just how freaky-deaky this, and how hallucinogenic the imagery can get in this place, because it has become so abstracted. It's a realm of abstraction made flesh, so the potential for the metaphysics to go batshit insane is huge. So that's what I want to see. And also, I want to see more interactions between the gods. I want to see Sigmar almost facing off against the likes of Zeech, against the likes of Khorne. I want to see them interacting, because he is on their status now, isn't he? He's a god, just like them. So why can't they interact? Why don't we see more of them talking to one another? Why don't we see them more debating? I bet Zeech does it all the time.
Just phone Sigma up.
I bet Zeech is constantly talking. Yeah, I'll bet he is. I'll bet you any money he is. Just sort of drip-feeding little suggestions into him, or taunting him or whatnot. I bet he's doing it all the time. Stuff like that.
Well,
That's what I want to see. The emergence of Slaanesh. I want to see...
So you actually hit upon the thing that I really want to see, and that is the fantasy roleplay book. Mm-hmm. Because there's been a rumour of this kicking around for about 6-7 months now, and if true, that's the thing that's going to open up the mortal realms for me. I mean, Malign Portents... Yeah. Malign Portents has given a better idea of how the realms work. They are not... In my mind, the way that it was being described, that they were almost just flat earths on top of each other, stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're spheres. They're spheres that spin in the great nothing.
Yeah, they're like... They're sort of interlinked magisteria, aren't they? So they're realities in their own rights that function in this wider state. That's almost like an Uberverse. And they sometimes collide. Sometimes you get like bleed-throughs from one realm into another. Sometimes you don't. Some of them are interlinked by weird bridges or like metaphysical means. It's quite wonderful. And the potential is just... infinite.
Oh yeah,
dragons. More dragons in AOS. I would go for an entire force of dragons. I would go for that. That would probably be the one. I would lay down hundreds of pounds for a dragon force.
An entire worm force as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Absolutely. But it's hard.
It is.
It's hard to say, isn't it? It's hard to say what's going to happen.
I'm just going to wait for Games Workshop to tell me what I want. I think that's the best way to go.
Absolutely, because they're very good at it right now.
Before we close up, there's...
I mean, with regards to... sorry, go on. With regards to Slaanesh, I wouldn't... They could even do like an avatar of Slaanesh.
Yes,
because he is much weaker now. They could represent him in the game system. If they can do Nagash, there's no reason why they can't do Slaanesh or an avatar of Slaanesh.
Yeah. That's the question, though, that's just popped into my mind is, does this mean that the Horned Rat's going to get ejected from the Pantheon? No!
I think so.
Or is the Horned Rat going to be the next Malign Portents?
I think yeah, quite possibly. I think he's still going to be kicking about. He's just not going to be, he's just not going to be part of the Pantheon, I don't think. Or maybe that's going to be like the thing. Maybe that's going to be the dynamic. Maybe there's a struggle between Slaanesh and the Horned Rat.
That would make me so happy. I love the Horned Rat. That would be cool. The Horned Rat's great.
Yeah, me too.
What I was going to...
But, 40k?
What the hell do we think of for 40k?
I want a new Abaddon model. That's what I want. I want to see what the main Chaos Legions are doing now. I want, after the destruction of Cadia, the eruption of the Cicatrix Maledictum, what's Abaddon's next move? And what is it going to mean, Are they going to have him fade into the background a little more, which is okay by me. I don't have any particular problem with that. So that the Primarchs can be emphasized? Possibly. Or is he going to explode back onto the scene like Archaon did? Is there going to be like a Black Crusade Codex or something where he's got a new model and we've got new Chaos miniatures and stuff like that?
Entirely possible.
Who knows? Oh, the emergence of Lorgar. Yeah. That's what I want to see. I want to see Lorgar leave his Reclusiam and lead the Word Bearers on a hideous holy crusade across the universe, the opposite of Guilliman's crusade, and I want those two forces to meet.
I think my answer is going to be, and I don't want to say squats because that's an obvious answer, but I want...
That's an obvious answer.
I want to see... the Imperium Abhumans make a reappearance. The Ogrins have been kicking about, but I don't think the Rattlings have been around for a long time now. So I want to see that. I want to see all
the
abhumans make a reappearance, an abhuman army. So squats, ratlins, ogrins, that type of thing. Yeah, Imperial Beastmen. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Why not? Why not? You know what? With the eruption of the Cicatrix Maledictum, there's no reason why that shouldn't be the case. There's going to be more abhumans knocking about now than there were before.
And I want to see Gilliman try to work out what the hell to do with it.
You know, because they're, you know. Yeah, because that's another thing I want to see, actually. I want to see more of Gilliman struggling with the Imperium.
Gilliman just walking into the Golden Throne.
I really want to see that.
Look at that! What have you done?
Yeah. Can you imagine him when he meets the Ecclesiarchy?
What is this?
He's going to be like struggling not to kill them all, presumably.
Yeah, there's too much in 40k I want.
What if he meets like... Yeah, me too. I mean, I want to see more of what's going on with like the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves. I want to see what their dynamic is now in relation to the wider Imperium.
Yeah, I think Space Wolves is a good one.
I want the Space Wolves to be declared traitor. I want them to be declared traitor. I really do. I think that would give them such an interesting dynamic to play with, because they would be the loyal renegades. I want them to be declared traitor, but still be loyal to the Emperor, to still be loyal to the Imperium, to the idea of the Imperium. And so to fight is almost like an outside force.
That's going to happen with both the Space Wolves and the Dark Angels. I think they're both going to get pushed outside of the sphere of influence of the Imperium. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love it. I'd be so happy. It would just lend them this much needed dynamism and add these layers of intrigue to the way the Space Marines operate.
I think that is a very strong possibility. I think that's something that's going to happen. But really,
that'd be awesome.
More
Primarchs.
All the Primarchs.
Primarchs for everyone.
You get a Primarch. You get a Primarch. You get a Primarch.
Except the dead ones.
So the last thing
that's what I want to see.
Need to do this morning, is we have a winner to announce. Last episode, I did a little competition, and that was that we wanted to know why Shadespire was a good place to go on holiday, and the winner got a Shade. Well, we had 2 Shadespire books to send over via Audible. We had a nice collection of people send in some answers, so I'm going to read these out to you in ascending order, with the winner coming last. Okay? So, Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because your vacation never ends. That's from Stuart Murray. Sean Graham says, Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because the fun never stops. From Scott Ferguson, we've got Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because it's better than Blackpool during a plague. Matt.
I'd have just left it better than Blackpool.
It's not.
To be honest,
Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because it's not Wolverhampton. Matt Clark.
That's
Matt Clark
a good
says
one.
Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because Chernobyl was fully booked. Adam Slater says.
That's quite good.
Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because blood for the blood god.
Of course, someone was going to do it, weren't they? And someone was going to do it.
Christopher Napier wins with the amazing Shadespire is a lovely place to have a holiday because there is plenty of time for reflection.
That's very good.
Christopher Napier's won that, so I'll put it onto the Facebook as well. If you give give me a shout, Christopher, and we will get you some. We'll get you the audiobook sent. So who do you think takes second place out of all that?
Second place.
Well, that was me.
I think better than Wolverhampton's pretty good. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I like that one.
So I think Mr. Stuart Murray will take that as well. Then he gets number 2. So with all that being said, where do you want to pimp yourself, George? Because I think it's time for us to get out of here.
Okie dokie. You can find my work at www.strangeplaygrounds.com, where you'll find my fiction and my reviews and my articles and ramblings about all sorts of stuff. You can find me at the Twitter channel Enigmatic Elegy, which has all sorts of weirdy-beardy little bits and pieces. And you can also find me at the YouTube channel Exaggerated Elegy, where you can find videos on all sorts of things, from philosophy to fiction to reviews of films to video game let's plays, and you can also find my articles and my reviews on the gingernutsofhorror.com.
You can find me here at the Fluffenhammer, because my entire life has been taken over by this Fluffenhammer. There is other stuff that I'm working on in the background, but that's really far away, so there's not really much point in discussing that yet. But yeah, you can check out the Fluffenhammer at thefluffenhammer.weebly.com, and you can find me on YouTube at Grufflock, where there's lots of Fluffenhammery stuff going on. There is bits and bobs on there. Currently, I've got I made the mistake, right?
Fluffenhammery. Fluffenhammery.
It has.
So it's become a verb.
Yes.
That's ace. Fluffenhammery. Or an adjective, rather.
What I've quite enjoyed
so cool.
is watching that the word fluff has been used in multiple different ways on the Facebook group. This Crafty Tabletop have now taken the fluff is life, the fluff is love, which is one of my favourite things I've ever seen. That's
very cool. That's
it
very
makes
cool.
me far too happy. But I made a mistake, George. I decided I was going to do readings of all of the Malign Portents stories as they were coming out. I'm now trying to get them out daily.
Right.
And I'm still 6 behind.
Oh.
I didn't expect this to be this many, George. I didn't expect them to do them this quickly.
There are lots of
They're
them.
putting them out really quickly, George.
Uh-huh.
Can't keep up, George.
They are. It's a bit of it's a deluge of narrative going on at the moment.
George. I can't keep up. Also, there is Mapping the Mortal Realms, which is a series that is going to be looking at different parts of the Age of Sigmar universe. At the moment, I'm going to be working my way through Order, and then when that's done, I'll be going back to... well, it won't be Suffer Not the Alien to Live, because they've got all the alien races have been done in their series. But after that, I'll be doing the Imperium of Man, which is going to be a series looking at all the different parts of the Imperium. And whilst also trying to get caught up with Malign Portents. There's so many!
Best of luck.
And there's other ones that they put out in White Dwarf that aren't on the site, so I need to work out how to get them in as well. It doesn't end. It really is.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Spoiled for choice.
Yeah,
we're spoiled for choice at the moment. George. It's great.
I made a mistake. With all that being said, I think it's time for us to get out of here. So, thank you very much, George.
I think so. And my pleasure. My absolute pleasure. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, Slaanesh is coming.
It's coming! Thank you very much, everyone out there, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed your experience this morning. Please don't. Bye-bye.